Now, people are probably not gonna like this video, but overall, I'm basically saying that most people out there that have a Tesla or want a Tesla, they can't afford a Tesla. Now, that kind of sounds weird, right? Because saying like, hey, if a person has a Tesla, Tommy, well, obviously they can afford to actually have one. Because if you can buy it, you can afford it. The answer is actually not. Just being able to buy something does not mean you can actually afford it. Because overall, it's pretty evident. Being able to afford some monthly payment or even being able to afford something in cash doesn't mean from a financial point of view that you can actually go ahead and afford it in the first place. And by the way, I myself cannot even afford a Tesla. And I'm not saying, for example, that, hey, I am the ultimate person to look at, so if I can't afford it, no one can. That's not what I'm saying, obviously, okay? There are people out there that have a lot more money than I do, but the whole goal is not how much money I have, how much money you do, but it's just to run the numbers to make sure, hey, can you afford it or can you not afford it, okay? So that's what we're gonna break down in this video and how to actually figure it out and how to do the math. Now, as always, guys, like this video on top of also subscribe and hit the bell to get notified. Even if you're new to the channel, even if it sounds controversial, trust me, you're going to enjoy this video if you're into the truth, okay? Now, I assume, and I like to use these two ways when it comes to actually being able to calculate how much car a person can buy. So here's the math. I use either the income method or the net worth method. The income method says, hey, Dave Ramsey says this all the time, okay? If you can't afford to buy a car in cash, you can't afford it. But even further, you should not have more than half your annual income in cars. Now, this basically means, for example, to be able to afford a $41,000 car with the shipping, with the everything associated with this car, by the way, not even including, for example, the autopilot and the extra rims or maybe like a different type of paint or whatever. The answer is to be able to afford a $41,000 Tesla Model 3, the answer is you have to have an income of around $82,000. So it can be half your income net. On top of that, you need to be able to save up $41,000 in cash. That is also a lot of money. Now, this basically means only around 12% of people out there actually have an income that high, like at least for a household. So most people cannot afford it when it comes to, for example, using that method, the income method. Now, my method says something a little bit more different. It says, hey, the only car you should buy is a car you can afford to pay for in cash and not stay with $0. Stay with like around $500, $1,000 for emergencies here and there. And on top of that, the car you buy should not be more than 10% of your net worth, beyond $5,000, okay? Now, what that basically means is if you're buying a car for $5,000 or less, you're okay. You can buy whatever car you want. Just save up for it in cash, okay? That's the idea. And have some money on the side in case something goes wrong. But beyond $5,000, you go on the net worth base. Basically saying, hey, if you want to buy a $41,000 car, you need to have a net worth around $410,000. Now, guess what? The medium net worth in America, no one out there is close to having that much money. And by the way, the average amount of money needed to retirement, according to like Bloomberg and all those people, is around $3 million. So most people, guess what? They don't have that net worth. On top of that, they don't have money for retirement, according to Bloomberg per se, and it's also all like a travesty. So tell me, if people can't afford a Tesla based on income, based on net worth, who the heck are those people actually buying Teslas? The answer is, you're seeing a bunch of people drive Teslas that can't afford to have a Tesla. They can only have the ability to actually buy one. Because remember, affording something is a lot more different than being able to actually buy it, in a sense, okay? So the idea is anytime you buy something that has wheels and an engine and goes down in value, you have to understand that what this basically means is you're burning cash. Now, burning cash is not a problem when you can afford to do it because you have more income coming in, but burning cash when you cannot afford to burn cash, the answer is it is always going to be a terrible idea. So what are your options if you actually want to buy a Tesla? The answer is two options. Either one, you just don't buy a Tesla, you skip a Tesla, which is more than fine. Or number two, you buy a used Tesla. Now, for everyone out there that gets worried when I say buy a 3 to 7 year old Tesla, if that worries you, buying a car that's that old, the answer is you probably should not be buying a new Tesla. Because in reality, when I think about buying, for example, a used Toyota or a used Honda or Mazda, I know these cars can run for 200 to 250,000 miles to even up to 300,000 miles. Some of these cars have been known to go for like 500,000 miles, all right? So I'm not kidding. That's like a real legitimate mileage number, right? So the idea is buying a used car with like that's like 5-7 years old with like 50K miles doesn't scare me if I know that car is reliable. However, if you have doubts when it comes to Tesla, why would you go ahead and buy a brand new one when in a few years it's going to lose value? And on top of that, it's going to become highly unreliable according to your assumptions. That's the idea. So overall, that's the main core. However, if you can afford to pay cash for a used Tesla, you can actually find a 2018, 2020 Tesla Model 3 version for like around 25 to 30,000 miles. But you know, the big thing is like the battery is not going to be doing as well anymore. If you're living in a hot area, it's probably not going to charge up that fast. It's probably going to lose charge a lot faster. That's the core idea. People get very worried about batteries. In reality, the battery is like the whole thing of the car, okay? Now, it's not to say, for example, obviously, things get a lot more affordable here. Because if you're looking at a Tesla that's 25,000, 30,000, it becomes a lot more affordable. However, if you're using my net worth method, then you obviously will not be able to still afford this thing, okay? And the idea is, Tommy, I wonder, okay, can you afford to buy a Tesla? The answer is, technically I can. Technically, I can actually go and buy a brand new spanking Tesla, like no problem, because of my net worth method. But in reality, that would be a terrible idea because I still need to have more money as far as building my net worth even higher to give me more passive income. So the idea is, if it's like having a rule, but the rule is still subject to you. So if I have a rule that says I can go ahead and spend 10% of my net worth, buy a brand new Tesla, and no problem, right? But the idea is, if that makes me feel worried about spending 50K on a Tesla and then having, for example, that 50K in 5 years turn into 25K, the answer is that's not really what I want to do. I'd rather have that money in the market. So if I were to actually go ahead and use my net worth method to buy a Tesla, I would still buy a used Tesla. 3 to 5, 7 years, okay? And the idea is I would have to be very confident as far as reliability. Now, for me personally, buying a Tesla here in Dominican Republic makes absolutely no sense. Mechanics are a problem, repairs are a problem, and we don't really have Tesla charging places here, okay? Like it's very old stuff, okay? It just has not gotten here yet, like fully. But even in America, if the numbers don't run, I am still not buying one, all right? That's the overall idea. So if you're using the income method and you want to buy a Tesla because you make 50K, you have 25K saved up, and you want to buy a used one, that's more than fine. I do agree, Teslas are pretty to look at. They're fancy. On top of that, they're hip, right? That's what my mom would say. But overall, most people out there cannot buy a Tesla. So what is the alternative here? The alternative is a car. All right, a car that takes you from point A to point B. It doesn't have to be a Tesla. Now, I know a lot of people that tend to watch these videos are people interested in buying Teslas and they're already set on buying a car. But one thing you have to learn how to be as you get older and just mature overall, not really like an age thing, but you have to become flexible and you have to become responsible in the purchases you actually make. Not everything you buy is going to be exactly what you want, but you have to make every buying decision based on a needs decision. At least try to do it, okay? So when I'm looking to buy a car, and I know for a fact I really care about reliability, I really care about affordability, I really care about, driving something nice. I can look at, for example, a Lexus or an Acura or a Honda or Toyota or Mazda. I can buy a decent car for like $20,000. And if I'm not going to spend $30,000 on a Tesla, that's money I could just basically go ahead and invest the difference, right? And have that money grow for me and make me more money. So overall, when you think about it, if you were to go ahead, I did some math here, which is actually surprising, honestly. If I were to go ahead and say, I'm going to buy a $20,000 car and not spend $41,000 on a Tesla, well, if I grab that 20 extra K and I invested it into an index fund like the S&P 500, and I made 10.53% over 20 years, 10 years, that money would turn into around 10 years into around $127,000. That is a lot of money, right? So now I'm looking at, I have $120,000 like in 10 years, which by the way, the average person does not have, not even in net worth or cash. Now I'm in a much better position. And on top of that, if I buy a car that's decent, reliable, I'm still riding around this thing. You know, I think the big catch with Tesla is the idea of you have autopilot, you have an electric car. If it's fast, okay, I've driven a Tesla before. It is fast. It is nice. You know, it has so much tech, but it has so many things that could go wrong eventually because everything is tech. You know, so one main thing that I kind of like unfocused from was a big part of the reason I wanted Tesla was basically the autopilot. But then I realized like a lot of cars now, they're like $20,000, $25,000. They have, for example, like cruise control. They have speed control. They have, for example, lane departure. They have, for example, lane assist. They have, for example, lane switching technology. And they don't cost $50,000, you know? And a car can go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. But where are you going in 3 seconds? You know, like that's what I'm saying. You know, and you get on a highway, you're like, but I can merge so much faster. Like those are just very basic things that don't justify spending $20,000 on a car. They're safe cars. I agree, but there are also safer cars out there too that don't cost that much money. You know, so you gotta be careful when you use ideas to justify a bad purchase. You know, buying something you don't need, you can buy it, but just don't justify it. All right, that's the idea. So when will I be buying a Tesla? Probably not anytime soon, all right? Probably not at all. Probably like not anytime soon at all, okay? And the benefit is the longer you wait, the better the tech gets, the more competition comes into the area, and probably, for example, the better the price also gets. That's also a big benefit. So in the meantime, I'll be looking at naturally aspirated gas combustion engines and just call it a day in the meantime and just drive normal cars until these things get cheaper, better, and more reliable. That's it! Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified. And by the way, simple rule always, okay? The car you buy that's below 5K, just pay cash for it. Don't get into car loans. Don't get crazy in debt. Don't become one of those people that buys things, owns things, but their biggest asset is their car. That is so stupid. Don't do that. If your biggest asset is something that loses value, that is the dumbest thing ever, okay? Biggest asset should be, for example, real estate, you know, stocks and maybe even gold if you're into that, okay? I'm not into gold. I'm not into like having something there do nothing for me. But overall, that's at least better than buying a car because you're not really going to lose that much value with it, prospectively, all right? But thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified. But comment down below exactly, okay? If you were to be able to buy a Tesla, which Tesla would it be? For me, it was always the Model X. And then it became the Model S. And Teslas are getting very nice and spicy, okay? But you let people make bad decisions. You don't make them yourselves, all right? Thanks for watching. Long-term team out. Another video's up here. My face is here. And as always, long-term team officially out. Peace.